The children were laughing. That was the first impossible thing. Not the snow, not the abandoned frontier, not the silence that haunted every forgotten village beyond the kingdom's borders. Children were laughing where only wolves should have been mourning. Somewhere beyond the towering pines, innocent voices recited lessons, while a squad of masked assassins raced through the forest. If they reached the school before the next church bell echoed across the valley, every child inside would disappear before sunset. No witnesses, no heirs, no future. Alpha King Gareth Ravencrest pulled his warhorse to an abrupt stop. His royal escort immediately reached for their weapons. "My king!" Gareth raised one hand. "Listen." The soldiers fell silent. The wind carried the unmistakable sound of young voices reading together. Not crying, not hiding, learning. He followed the sound until the trees opened into a tiny clearing where a weathered stone schoolhouse stood beneath ancient oak branches. Broken windows had been carefully repaired with handmade glass. Wildflowers grew beside the entrance despite the harsh mountain cold. Inside, a gentle woman smiled as she held open a worn storybook before a circle of eager orphaned wolf children. "No crown can make a great leader," she said softly, "but a kind heart can." The children repeated every word with bright, hopeful eyes. Gareth forgot how to breathe. If you love emotional werewolf romance filled with hidden heirs, forgotten villages, compassionate heroines, unforgettable alpha kings, and destinies written by love instead of power, stay until the very end. Tonight, the future of every wolf kingdom will not begin inside a royal palace. It will begin inside a forgotten classroom, beyond the distant tree line. A pair of crimson eyes watched the little school in silence. The assassins had found it. Morning always began before the sun reached the mountains. Long before the children opened their eyes, Eliana Brooks was already outside gathering water from the frozen stream that wound through Frostpine Valley. The old wooden bucket was patched with iron bands, and every winter it leaked a little more. She never complained. The children had learned something important from her long before they learned how to read. Some burdens became lighter simply because they were carried with love. The little schoolhouse stood at the edge of a forgotten frontier where no royal messenger had visited in years. Its roof sagged beneath countless winters. Several windows had been replaced with carefully polished pieces of old glass collected from abandoned cottages. The chimney leaned slightly after one terrible storm. Yet every morning warm smoke still rose into the cold air. To travelers it looked insignificant. To 27 orphaned wolf children, it was home. Eliana quietly unlocked the classroom door. The familiar scent of old books, pine wood, and fresh bread greeted her. There were only 12 desks, 27 students. The older children always offered their seats to the younger ones. She had never asked them to. Kindness had become their first lesson. Books covered nearly every shelf. None matched. Some had missing pages. Others had cracked leather bindings held together with simple twine. Most had been discarded by wealthy families who believed worn books no longer held value. Eliana disagreed. A story, she often told the children, does not become less beautiful because its cover grows old. The classroom slowly filled with sleepy voices. "Good morning, Miss Eliana." "Good morning," she greeted every child by name. Not one was forgotten. Not one became simply another orphan. There was Owen, whose curiosity never rested. Lily, who dreamed of becoming a healer. Marcus, who secretly fed every injured bird he found. Iva, who stuttered whenever she felt frightened, but sang beautifully when no one was watching. Each child carried invisible scars. Some remembered villages destroyed by war. Others remembered nothing except cold nights and empty stomachs. A few remembered parents whose faces had slowly faded from memory. Eliana never forced them to speak about the past. Instead, she gave them a future to imagine. Lessons rarely began with letters. They began with questions. What makes someone brave? Hands rose immediately. A warrior. A king. A hunter. Eliana smiled gently. Perhaps. She wrote another word upon the old chalkboard. Compassion. Can kindness also require courage? The room became thoughtful. Little Owen slowly raised his hand. It is harder. Why? Because fighting back is easy. Forgiving someone is not. A quiet smile appeared on Eliana's face. I believe that is one of the wisest things anyone has ever said inside this classroom. The other children laughed warmly. No one laughed at Owen. They celebrated him. That was another lesson. Victory was never meant to belong to only one person. After reading lessons came chores. No child was forced. Everyone volunteered. Some chopped wood. Others repaired chairs. Several older boys helped the younger children practice writing their names. One little girl carefully mended torn library books, using flour paste she had learned to make herself. Nobody asked whose responsibility each task was. The school had taught them something rarer than discipline. It had taught belonging. Food remained scarce. Every meal required careful planning. Breakfast often consisted of warm oat porridge sweetened with wild berries gathered during summer. When supplies grew dangerously low, Eliana quietly reduced her own portions. The children noticed. She believed they did not. One afternoon, Owen placed half his bread beside her bowl. You forgot yours. She looked at him. No. I am simply not hungry. He smiled knowingly. You always become not hungry whenever food is scarce. Several other children quietly placed pieces of bread onto her plate. Without discussion, without hesitation, within moments, her bowl held more food than anyone else's. Tears briefly filled her eyes. You need this. Lily gently shook her head. No, we need you. Eliana looked around the room. Not one child had spoken from obligation. Every word came from love. For the first time in many years, she allowed herself to cry. Only a little. Only for a moment. Outside the schoolhouse, however, not everyone admired what she had built. Several nearby villagers often whispered whenever they passed. Books cannot protect children. Those orphans should be trained as soldiers. They waste precious years learning poetry. Eliana never argued. She simply continued teaching, because she knew something most adults had forgotten. A sword could defend a kingdom, only wisdom could preserve it. Late each afternoon, she gathered the children beneath the enormous oak tree beside the school. There she told stories instead of history. Stories about honesty, sacrifice, mercy, hope. She never realized those stories were shaping future leaders. One evening, after the younger children had fallen asleep, Owen remained outside staring at the stars. Eliana joined him. What are you thinking about? He hesitated. You think someone remembers my real parents? She sat beside him on the old wooden bench. I believe love never truly forgets, but I cannot remember their faces. You do not have to. Why? Because the people who loved you would rather you remember how deeply you were loved than how they looked. The boy quietly nodded. I hope they were kind. I believe they were, hidden beneath her calm voice. A quiet fear lingered. She alone knew the small silver medallion Owen had worn around his neck when she found him years earlier. Its crest matched no ordinary family. She had searched forgotten archives until she finally recognized it. Silver Moon Pack, a royal bloodline believed completely extinct. She had hidden the truth ever since. Not only Owen's, Several children sleeping beneath her roof carried similar secrets. Different crests, different kingdoms, the last surviving heirs of fallen alpha families. She had never told them. Children deserved the chance to become good people before discovering they might someday become rulers. Inside her small bedroom rested an old wooden chest, locked, hidden beneath folded blankets. Inside lay 27 carefully labeled envelopes, one for each child. Each contained everything she had uncovered about their true heritage. Each remained sealed, waiting only if peace ever returned. Near midnight, a soft knock echoed against the schoolhouse door. Eliana opened it carefully. An elderly traveler stood outside, wrapped in a weathered gray cloak. Snow covered his shoulders. "I was told this road led to forgotten children," she smiled gently. "Then you were given good directions." He accepted a cup of warm tea before speaking again. "I have wandered through 6 kingdoms. I have seen castles stronger than mountains. I have seen armies larger than cities." He looked toward the sleeping classroom. "But I have never seen anything more valuable than this little school." Before leaving, he placed a fragile parchment upon her desk. "The world believes the old prophecy speaks of a king." He quietly smiled. It never did. After he disappeared into the falling snow, Eliana carefully unfolded the faded parchment. Only one sentence remained legible. "The future shall not be forged by the Alpha who conquers kingdoms, but by the teacher who teaches forgotten heirs to love them." Her heartbeat slowed somewhere beyond the mountains. War drums echoed faintly. She did not yet know why. Far away inside Ravencrest Castle, Alpha King Gareth stared silently at a map spread across the royal council table. Red markers appeared one after another along the frontier. Captain Aldrich entered without knocking. "My king." "The Brotherhood of the Black Claw has begun moving." Gareth looked up. "Where?" The captain pointed toward one tiny location, a forgotten school hidden beyond the pines. The king's expression hardened. "They are not marching toward a battlefield." "No, Your Majesty. They are marching toward children." Without another word, Gareth reached for his sword. The horses arrived before sunrise, not at a gallop, at a measured pace. Alpha King Gareth Ravencrest had ordered absolute silence. No horns, no banners, no royal announcement. If assassins truly hunted the frontier school, he would not lead danger directly to its doorstep. Morning mist drifted through the towering pines as the royal escort stopped beyond the last hill overlooking the valley. Captain Aldrich dismounted first. "Our scouts confirmed movement during the night." "How many?" "At least 40 members of the Brotherhood." "They have not attacked. They are waiting." "For what?" The captain hesitated. "For everyone important to gather in one place." Gareth's jaw tightened. "They are planning a single strike." He looked toward the tiny stone school standing peacefully beneath the ancient oak. Children were already gathering outside. Some carried worn books beneath their arms. Others laughed while chasing one another through the dew-covered grass. Nothing about the scene suggested danger. Everything about it reminded Gareth of what his kingdom had forgotten. Peace. Inside the classroom, Eliana carefully wrote today's lesson across the old chalkboard. Knowledge gives strength. Kindness gives purpose. The children repeated each sentence together. Not because they had memorized it, because they believed it. Little Emma raised her hand. "Miss Eliana?" "Yes?" "If someone hurts us, should we still be kind?" The room became quiet. Eliana slowly placed the chalk upon the desk. Kindness never means allowing evil to continue. The children listened carefully. We protect the innocent. We forgive when hearts truly change. But we never confuse mercy with surrender. Owen smiled. So courage and kindness belong together. They always have. A gentle knock interrupted the lesson. Every child turned toward the door. Eliana walked across the classroom. When she opened it, time stopped. A tall man stood quietly beneath the morning light. Black royal armor, dark cloak, golden eyes, the Alpha King. Neither of them spoke. Neither needed to. The first breath they shared changed everything. A fragrance drifted through the cool autumn air. Fresh rain, old parchment, wild lavender. Pine. After the first snowfall, Gareth forgot the world around him. His wolf surged awake with overwhelming force. Stuh. The primal word thundered through every instinct he possessed. Electric warmth exploded beneath his skin. His heartbeat became wild, ancient, certain. A deep, instinctive purr echoed inside his soul. Not heard, felt, the mate bond. After decades of silence, Death had finally spoken. Across the doorway, Eliana staggered backward, one hand instinctively pressed against her heart. No. Warmth spread through every heartbeat. 1,000 forgotten dreams returned at once. Loneliness, hope, a future she had stopped believing existed. The invisible thread between them awakened. Neither could break it. Neither wished to. Captain Aldrich quietly lowered his eyes. He had witnessed alpha instincts before. Never like this. The air itself shimmered around the king. Even the morning breeze seemed reluctant to pass between the two strangers. Inside the classroom, the children watched with wide eyes. Little Emma whispered, "Why are they looking at each other like that?" Before anyone answered, Owen stood. He walked calmly toward Gareth. Every royal guard instinctively tensed. The boy simply smiled. "Good morning." Gareth looked down. Something extraordinary happened. The violent storm inside his wolf immediately settled. His racing heartbeat slowed. The overwhelming possessive instinct softened into quiet warmth. Captain Aldrich frowned. "Your Majesty." Gareth understood. The child had done nothing, yet somehow his very presence calmed alpha instincts. Not only Gareth's, a wolf among the royal escort relaxed. Weapons lowered, shoulders eased. The horses stopped stamping nervously. Peace spread naturally around Owen. Eliana noticed it too. She had seen it happen countless times. Arguments ended when Owen entered a room. Frightened children smiled around him. Angry adults lowered their voices without realizing why. Now, even the Alpha King stood peacefully beside him. The prophecy, it had always been true. Gareth slowly knelt before Owen, not as a ruler, as a man speaking to a child. "What is your name?" "Owen." "Do you enjoy living here?" The boy glanced toward Eliana. "I love living here." "Why?" "Because nobody asks who we used to be. They only care who we become." The answer struck Gareth harder than any battlefield wound. His kingdom had spent generations preserving bloodlines. This forgotten teacher had spent years building character. One had created endless wars. The other had quietly created hope. Gareth rose slowly. His golden eyes returned to Eliana. "You built this alone?" She smiled gently. "Never. The children built it with me. You should be in the palace. I already live where I am needed. You deserve more." She looked around the classroom. "I have everything I prayed for." He hesitated. "Even if you are my mate?" The children looked between them curiously. Eliana's expression softened. "I know what the bond means." "Then come with me." She slowly shook her head. "If I leave," she looked toward the children, "who teaches tomorrow's lesson?" Gareth followed her gaze. 27 young faces, every one of them waiting, trusting, depending upon her. For the first time, he understood why she refused. She was not rejecting him. She was protecting them. A messenger suddenly rode into the clearing. His horse collapsed from exhaustion before reaching the school steps. "Your Majesty!" He struggled to breathe. "The Brotherhood has surrounded the valley." Captain Aldrich immediately drew his sword. "How many?" "More than 200. Another scout arrived only moments later. Packs from Iron Fang Dominion have joined them. A third rider followed. They demand the children." The classroom fell silent. Several younger students instinctively moved closer to Eliana. Owen looked at Gareth. "Why do they want us?" No one answered. "Because no child should have to hear the truth." Gareth slowly removed his royal cloak. He placed it across Eliana's shoulders, a symbolic gesture, not of ownership, of protection. He met her eyes once more. They came looking for hidden heirs. His voice became firm. "They will find an Alpha King instead. Outside." A long wolf howl shattered the morning silence, then another, then dozens more. The school, hidden beyond the pines, had become the center of a coming war. The first arrow never reached the school. It shattered into silver dust halfway through the air. No one saw Gareth move. No one understood what had happened. One heartbeat. He stood beside Eliana. The next, he was already 20 yards beyond the school gate, facing an army that stretched from one end of the valley to the other. Children crowded behind the classroom windows. No one spoke. No one cried. Even fear seemed unwilling to disturb the silence their teacher had spent years building. Captain Aldrich drew his sword. "Royal Guard! Form the shield line!" Steel rang through the valley. Elite wolves rushed into position. Tower shields locked together, spears lowered. Every path leading to the school disappeared behind disciplined soldiers. Across the frozen meadow, a massive black wolf stepped forward. His transformation slowly faded until a broad-shouldered man wearing crimson armor stood before the assembled armies. High Alpha Lucien Ashfang. His scarred face carried the confidence of a conqueror who had never been denied. Behind him waited nearly 300 Iron Fang warriors. Farther back, figures dressed entirely in black remained motionless beneath the trees. The Brotherhood of the Black Claw, professional assassins, patient, silent, merciless. Lucien smiled. So, the rumors were true. The forgotten school exists. His cold eyes shifted toward the children standing behind the windows. And every future Alpha sleeps beneath one roof. Gareth remained perfectly still. "You crossed Ravencrest territory." "Why, crossed abandoned land." "You crossed into my protection," Lucien laughed. "Protection?" He slowly spread both arms. "You abandoned this frontier for years. Now you suddenly remember it?" The words struck harder than any weapon. Gareth offered no excuse. "Because none existed. I failed them," he admitted quietly. "I will not fail them again." A second figure stepped forward, elegant, graceful, wrapped in dark blue velvet instead of armor. Duchess Miriam Vale. For years she had advised the royal court. Now she stood beside the enemy. Captain Aldrich's face hardened. "You betrayed the crown," she answered calmly. "I served stability. You sold children. I preserved balance. You sold innocence." She smiled without warmth. "Innocence has never ruled kingdoms." Eliana quietly stepped onto the school porch. Her worn dress fluttered in the cold wind. She looked impossibly small, standing between two armies. Lucien studied her with open curiosity. "So, you are the famous teacher. I teach children. You teach future rulers. I teach kindness. He laughed again. And that is precisely why you are dangerous. His voice echoed across the valley. Children raised with mercy become weak. They hesitate. They forgive. They lose wars. Eliana met his eyes without fear. No. They stop creating them. Silence spread through both armies. Even several Iron Fang soldiers lowered their eyes. Lucien's smile disappeared. You truly believe books are stronger than claws? I believe wisdom decides when claws are no longer necessary. Behind her. Little Emma quietly opened the classroom door. Miss Eliana? Yes? We are not afraid. The teacher smiled gently. I know. One by one, the children stepped outside. Not to fight, to stand together. Owen moved beside Eliana. His small hand found hers. We stay together. The other children nodded. Together. Always. Lucien watched the scene with growing irritation. They have already chosen her over every king, Miriam whispered. That is why she must fall. Lucien slowly raised one armored hand. The children belong to the council. No, answered. They belong to themselves. The bloodline laws disagree. The bloodline laws end today. Gasps spread through both armies. Captain Aldrich stared toward his king. Even the royal guard had not expected those words. Gareth took one step forward. I revoke every decree treating children as political property. Another step. No heir will ever again be claimed through fear. A third. No classroom will ever answer to a throne. Lucien's face twisted with fury. You cannot erase centuries of law. I can erase injustice. The High Alpha roared. Brotherhood! The assassins moved. Black shadows burst from the forest, not charging Gareth, charging the children. Everything happened at once. Protect the students! Captain Aldrich shouted. Royal guards collided with assassins across the snowy field. Steel flashed, smoke bombs burst, dark figures slipped between trees. One assassin reached the school steps, a second, a third. Before any blade touched the children, the ground shook. Gareth inhaled once, deeply, then released his alpha dominance. The valley exploded with invisible power. The clouds above split apart. Ancient oak branches bent toward the earth. Snow lifted into the air like a silver storm. Every assassin froze mid-stride. Every wolf dropped instinctively to one knee. The pressure became overwhelming. Windows rattled, stone cracked. Even Lucien staggered backward. His eyes widened. The first king's blood. It still lives. Golden light surrounded Gareth. Ancient silver markings blazed across his arms and neck. His voice carried not as sound, but as command. No child will fear another king while I still breathe. The Brotherhood attacked anyway. Desperation replaced discipline. Dozens rushed forward together. Gareth moved, too fast to follow. One moment he stood before the school. The next, he appeared among the attackers. He struck without cruelty, without rage. Every movement ended a threat. Swords shattered, spears splintered. Assassins were thrown harmlessly across the snow by waves of invisible force. No unnecessary killing, only absolute protection. Captain Aldrich watched in awe. He fights like judgment itself. Lucien transformed. Bones cracked. Dark fur erupted across his body. A monstrous wolf towered over the battlefield. His roar shook the mountains. He lunged directly toward Owen. Gareth intercepted him. The collision thundered across the valley. Stone burst apart beneath their feet. The ancient oak trembled. Lucien clawed wildly. Gareth held his ground. Behind them, an assassin slipped through the chaos. No one noticed. Not Gareth, not Aldrich, only Eliana. The masked figure raised a poisoned crossbow. Its bolt pointed directly at Owen. Without hesitation, Eliana ran. The bolt struck her shoulder. She collapsed across the snow in front of the boy. Time stopped. Owen screamed, "Miss Eliana!" Gareth turned. He saw his mate lying motionless. Blood slowly stained the white snow beneath her. The golden light surrounding him vanished. For one terrible heartbeat, the entire world became silent. Then, his eyes burned pure white. The wrath of an alpha king had only begun. The valley forgot how to breathe. Snow drifted silently around Eliana's fallen body. No one moved. No one dared. The poison-dark bolt remained lodged in her shoulder, its blackened tip spreading thin veins beneath her pale skin. She was still conscious, but only barely. Her first instinct had not been to save herself. It had been to shield Owen. The boy knelt beside her, trembling. "Miss Eliana," his voice cracked. "Please do not leave." She managed the faintest smile. "I promised." Her breathing faltered. Lesson was not finished. A tear slipped down Owen's face. "I do not care about the lesson. I care about you." Across the battlefield, Gareth heard every word. His wolf did not roar. It became terrifyingly quiet. The white fire burning inside his eyes extinguished, replaced by something far older than rage: judgment. Ancient alpha power rippled outward without a sound. Every warrior felt it. The snow beneath Gareth's boots crystallized into shimmering silver. The wind stopped. Even the wolves of Iron Fang lowered their ears instinctively. Lucien backed away one cautious step, then another. For the first time in his life, he understood fear. "You cannot frighten me," Lucien growled. Gareth answered calmly, "I am not trying to." He disappeared. Lucien barely saw the movement. A crushing force slammed into his chest, hurling the massive alpha wolf through 3 ancient pine trees before he crashed into a frozen boulder. The mountain echoed. Before Lucien could recover, Gareth stood above him. One hand closed around the larger alpha's throat. "You hunted children," Lucien struggled. "You poisoned a teacher." The king's voice never rose. "You mistook compassion for weakness." Lucien swung one enormous claw. Gareth caught it. Bone cracked. The claw hung uselessly at Lucien's side. "No," Lucien whispered. "This is impossible." "No," Gareth replied. "This is justice arriving late." He released Lucien only long enough for the fallen alpha to stagger to his feet. "I will not execute you while you are helpless. Stand." Lucien's pride forced him upright. He attacked with every ounce of strength remaining. His jaws snapped. His claws tore through the air. His fury shook the valley. None of it mattered. Gareth flowed around every strike with impossible precision. One movement, another. A final blow landed against Lucien's chest. The enormous alpha collapsed onto both knees. His transformation dissolved. His armor shattered. His strength was gone. Across the battlefield, Iron Fang warriors slowly lowered their weapons, not because they had been ordered, because they knew the battle had ended. Captain Aldrich raised his sword. "The enemy yields!" Hoyle guards surrounded the remaining assassins. Members of the Brotherhood attempted to flee into the forest. None escaped. Every path had already been sealed. Within minutes, the battlefield fell silent. Only one matter remained unfinished. Duchess Miriam Vale. She stood alone near the broken stone wall surrounding the school. Her elegant clothing was untouched. Her hands remained clean, as though betrayal had never stained them. Captain Aldrich approached with 4 royal guards. "You are under arrest for treason against the crown." She lifted her chin proudly. I saved this kingdom from weak rulers. You sold children. I protected stability. You murdered hope. Her composure finally cracked. They were bloodlines. They were assets. They were never children. Eliana's quiet voice drifted across the snow. They were always children. Every eye turned toward her. She had awakened. Weak, pale, but alive. Royal healer Rowan Ashford knelt beside her, silver healing energy flowing from both hands. The poison has stopped spreading, he announced. She will recover. Relief swept through Gareth so suddenly that his knees nearly failed him. He walked toward Eliana slowly. The battlefield disappeared around him. The armies no longer mattered. Neither did victory, only her. Blood stained his armor. Cuts covered his hands. Snow clung to his cloak. He stopped only a few feet away. Then, the Alpha King of Ravencrest dropped to both knees, not from injury, from love. The valley watched in complete silence. A king who had never bowed before another ruler lowered himself before a village teacher. His voice trembled. I arrived too late. Eliana gently shook her head. You came. I should have protected you sooner. You protected all of them. I almost lost you. Her fingers slowly reached toward his face. You did not. Gareth closed his eyes against her touch. For years he had believed strength meant never showing weakness. Now tears escaped him without resistance. I cannot ask you to forgive every mistake I have made. You do not have to. I cannot erase the years this frontier was forgotten. No, she smiled softly. But together, we can change the years ahead. Behind them, the children quietly gathered. Little Emma smiled through tears. They look happier than kings. Owen laughed softly. She always said real leaders kneel before serving others. Captain Aldrich heard the words. So did every soldier. None would ever forget them. Gareth carefully took Eliana's hand. Eliana Brooks. She looked into his golden eyes. I cannot promise a life without hardship. I cannot promise peace every day. But I swear before every pack, every child, and every ancestor, your classroom will never stand alone again. She squeezed his hand gently. My answer was never no. He blinked. It was not? It was not yet. A warm laugh spread among the children. Even several weary soldiers smiled. The darkness hanging over the valley finally began to lift. Behind them, Lucienne Ashfang and Duchess Miriam Vale were placed in enchanted silver restraints. Gareth rose to his feet, still holding Eliana's hand. His voice carried across the assembled armies. Lucienne Ashfang will stand public trial before every surviving alpha. He will answer not only for rebellion, but for crimes against innocent children. He turned toward Miriam. And Duchess Miriam Vale, you shall spend the remainder of your life preserving what you once tried to destroy. He looked toward the school. You will rebuild every frontier classroom. You will restore every village abandoned through your deception. You will read every name of every orphan whose suffering you helped create. Miriam lowered her head. For the first time, she had no defense, only shame. As the first rays of evening sunlight broke through the clouds, Gareth looked toward the little stone school. Its walls were scarred, its windows were broken, its roof had been damaged by the battle. Yet children's laughter slowly returned. Not because the building had survived, because hope had, and Gareth finally understood that the greatest kingdom he would ever protect had never been a castle. It had always been a classroom. Spring arrived where winter had nearly claimed everything. The little stone school no longer stood alone. Builders from every pack had repaired its roof with sturdy oak beams. New windows reflected the morning sun, and shelves once filled with worn, mismatched books now held hundreds of carefully donated volumes from every corner of the kingdom. Yet one thing had not changed. Every morning, before anyone spoke of crowns or councils, children still gathered around their teacher. Eliana Brooks smiled as she opened the same weathered storybook that had survived the battle. The first lesson, she said gently, is the one we must never forget. The children answered together. Knowledge gives strength. Kindness gives purpose. Standing quietly near the doorway, Gareth smiled. The Alpha King wore no armor today, only a simple dark coat. He had learned that some victories were better witnessed than announced. Weeks earlier, the Great Council of Pax had gathered beneath the ancient Moonstone Circle. There, Gareth had abolished the bloodline laws forever. No child would again be claimed as property. No heir would be forced into power before choosing their own path. And no frontier village would ever be abandoned by the crown again. The decision changed the history of every wolf kingdom. One by one, the children received the truth about their past, not as frightened heirs, but as young people ready to understand where they had come from. Owen listened quietly as Gareth placed the silver moon medallion into his hands. This belonged to your family. The boy looked at the ancient crest. Do I have to become an alpha now? Gareth knelt so they stood eye to eye. No. You only have to become the man you choose to be. Owen smiled with visible relief. Then I choose to keep learning. The king laughed softly. I hoped you would. Soon afterward, Gareth made one final announcement before the assembled Pax. The first Royal Academy of Unity will be built here. He looked toward the schoolhouse. It will welcome every child, regardless of bloodline, title, or pack. The valley erupted into applause. It was not a palace that became the kingdom's greatest symbol. It was a classroom. As the celebration ended, Gareth turned toward Eliana. He held out his hand. Will you stand beside me? She looked at the children laughing beneath the old oak tree, then back at the man who had chosen compassion over tradition. Yes, not because you are a king, she slipped her hand into his, but because you finally learned the same lesson I have always taught. Together, they walked forward, not toward a throne built on fear, but toward a future built on wisdom. Years later, travelers would tell stories of the Alpha King who protected children before crowns, and the Luna who taught rulers to read before teaching them to lead. Their greatest legacy was never the peace treaty they signed, nor the enemies they defeated. It was the generation they raised. One that believed courage without compassion was incomplete, and compassion without courage could never protect the innocent. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments. What do you think is the greatest strength of a true leader? Power, wisdom, or kindness? Your answer might inspire someone else who reads it. And if you enjoy heartfelt werewolf romance filled with hope, family, redemption, and unforgettable alpha kings, please like this video, share it with someone who loves emotional stories, and subscribe for more journeys where love proves stronger than destiny. Until our next story, take care of the people who need your kindness the most. Sometimes, the future of an entire world begins with a single lesson, and one person willing to teach it.